El Salvador is coming to the White House on Monday. Does President Trump want him to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia with him?
The Supreme Court made their ruling last night very clear that it's the administration's responsibility to facilitate the return, not to effectuate the return. I believe the Department of Justice just filed another brief in the lower court. I would defer you to that for any updates. But as you mentioned, President Bukele will be here at the White House on Monday to talk about the cooperation that is at an all-time high.
That was White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt just moments ago responding to a Thursday Supreme Court decision ruling that the Trump administration is required to, quote unquote, facilitate the release of an alleged, we say alleged, but it's pretty solid, MS-13 gang member they say was wrongfully deported to an El Salvador prison. Now, despite that, President Donald Trump and his administration is forging ahead with its mass deportation measures, specifically focused on self-deportation. If we're joining us for more on that from the halls of Congress is our own DC correspondent Allison Steinberg, who's been following this really closely. Allison, the courts have tried pushing back on the Trump administration, but despite that, they're forging ahead with several rules, right, and policy changes that would encourage illegals to deport themselves.
Yes, they sure are. There are many efforts right now from the Trump administration encouraging these aliens who were wrongfully rolled out the red carpet for under the last regime to get out of the country. I mean, these people should not be here. Many of them are criminals, as we know, as you mentioned, the MS-13 gang member who's here, who they're trying to now get back into the country, which is just absurd in and of itself. But for those, that are here illegally, it is now highly encouraging for them to leave while they still have the opportunity to, if they ever want to find themselves back in America. The latest efforts from Trump in order to do this is to fine these people $998 a day. They're now immediately revoking the citizenship status for anyone who entered here through the CBP One app, which, as we know, this was sort of like a travel agency on our phone app for anyone that wanted to come here and cross the border illegally. And then in addition to that, they are also going so far as to take away or invalidate the social security numbers for thousands and thousands of aliens who were getting social security benefits. They were getting Medicare and Medicaid, and they were given, free government housing and so on and so forth. This was very prominent in many of the sanctuary cities throughout the nation. So the rights that have been afforded to these illegal aliens are being stripped away by the day. And quite frankly, I'm glad to see it happening because these people obviously shouldn't be here. And the sole fact that they're here is a crime in and of itself.
It is. And you get the argument, well, there are some people who are good and they're aiding the economy by working. And anecdotally, we know that there's a lot of people self-deporting, but obviously, I think that the Trump administration's justification for doing so really got bolstered by the Doge bombshell this week related to the Social Security numbers, right, which you just noted. They had given out millions of Social Security numbers to immigrants over the last 4 years.
Yes, they did. And this is terrifying for obvious reasons. But one thing that I like to point out here is that the left-wing mainstream media is selling this lie to their viewers that, oh, Trump's going to take away your Social Security. They're instilling this irrational fear into the brainwashed liberals that Trump is after their Social Security, when in fact, it's actually the Democrats who are. The Democrats are the ones who allow these aliens into our country in the first place. They're giving them the benefits that our hardworking American citizens have, paid into the system for so long. And then these benefits are now given to people that shouldn't be in our country. So this should alarm everyone. The left and the right together aligned should be rejoicing in the fact that this is being exposed, and they should be happy that instead of threatening their own Social Security, these people are being removed and will no longer be given the benefits that should only be awarded to actual American citizens.
Yeah, and we've been focused on or worried about Social Security benefits running out, and we're always worried that there's like a 10-year clock on the Social Security fund anyway. And yet some of these people are okay with giving them to illegals who have not paid into the system. But the propaganda, unfortunately, is working. Allison, you know how I know this? Because today I creep on the Nextdoor app. I don't have like my official face up there, but I do creep around that app to see what's going on in my neighborhood. And there were several people posting, oh, you know, our local representative voted to give away or voted to end our Medicare and Medicaid, blah, 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 which, as we know, is not true, is total propaganda, which gets us to another propaganda story of late, and that's with the passage of the SAVE Act, which is also related to the immigration issue because it passed Congress yesterday or the House yesterday. It's meant to stop, in part, it has several provisions, but the biggest focus is that it's supposed to prevent illegal aliens from voting in our elections. And we know they do that because the Heritage Oversight Project, in conjunction with Muckraker News, Anthony Rubini, who's been on the show several times, captured illegals in states like Georgia saying, oh yeah, I voted or I plan to vote in this election cycle. And this is right around the 2024 presidential election. So there's no denying that there is a significant number voting, but Democrats are saying that this is nothing but a lie from Republicans. How it is coordinated messaging, Allison. In fact, this is the latest CNN propaganda piece that aired today about the SAVE Act. Take a listen.
There's two separate issues. The first is the fact that there's very little evidence that non-citizens are voting regularly in elections, and when they sometimes do, those are largely seen as errors and judgment and really not some kind of concerted effort to try to rig an election. So that's the first thing that voting rights groups are pointing out. The other issue is that you have to prove that you're a citizen of the United States, and the way that you do that is perhaps you can show a real ID that shows you're a citizen, but not every state's real ID has some marker that shows that you are a citizen of the United States. That means perhaps you would have a passport. Half of Americans don't have a passport. There's also a question about if you have an ID that does not show that you were born in the United States, then you can use your birth certificate. But if you are a woman who has changed your name perhaps after you got married, your birth certificate may not match your ID.
Allison, women like you and I who are married, we may not get a vote now thanks to Republicans passing the SAVE Act. Is any of this propaganda true?
This is just such a load of hot garbage, and the fact that these lies are being perpetuated just infuriates me. Obviously, we know the goal of having these illegals pour in through our border is to allow them the right to vote in our federal elections, and it's unacceptable and it needs to be stopped immediately. That is the purpose of this SAVE Act, which just passed through the House overwhelmingly, and it's a good thing. But of course, leave it to the Democrats to try to spin this into something that it's not, trying to instill this ridiculous fear that underprivileged people and women aren't going to be allowed to vote in federal elections. I mean, it's a joke. And actually, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt addressed this today in the briefing. She reassured us that this is just another lie from the liberal lamestream media to instill fear and spread misinformation. She said she wouldn't be up at that podium supporting the SAVE Act along with President Trump if any of this were true. So again, this is just another smear campaign from the left to try to discredit the actual intent of the SAVE Act, which is meant to preserve and protect our elections. It's absolutely essential. It's not really much to ask that citizens provide proof of citizenship to vote in a federal election. This is how it's always been. And the fact that we've strayed so far away from that is alarming. And it's far past time we get back to basics here and require proof of citizenship to vote in elections. The next hurdle, though, is passing this through the Senate. Of course, we have a very slim majority there, so it's still yet to be determined what the outcome is going to be there. But hopefully,
are you hearing anything on the ground? Are you hearing anything on the ground about the passage in the Senate? Because let's look, the fabric of the Senate is very different from the House. And there is, like you said, a slim Republican majority, but many of those Republican senators, far more than the percentage in the House, I would say probably even are just rhinos, right? And so many of them are for open borders. Here's looking at you, Lindsey Graham. So do we have any kind of outlook on its potential in the Senate?
I have not heard much, though my intuition tells me outlook not so good. But knowing what the repercussions are for these aliens now, I think Trump is serious about getting them out. So hopefully this
Yeah.
changes the hearts and minds of some of these rhinos that are in the Senate.
Yeah, that you make a great point. It might be up to the Trump administration, right, to whip this vote, because they'll have to call on people like Lindsey Graham and get them on board with it, and some of these, these open border rhinos and those who look. The voting problem is not just a Democrat issue, though it's a large problem. It is a uniparty issue, and there's a lot of those uniparty swamp creatures in the Senate. Thank you so much, Allison Steinberg, for joining us from Congress. It's good to see you.
Great to see you too, Emerald. Thank you so much.
And despite the best efforts of Democrats and the deep state when it comes to our rigged elections, voting machine vulnerabilities is trending on X with nearly 140,000 posts at this moment. That's because Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard in that cabinet meeting yesterday noted that she had been briefed on the potential hackability of these machines. As I told you yesterday, that was based on a briefing that I've been made privy to in large part, with damning evidence against these machines and how they are easily manipulated. If we had that soundbite, we can play it now. I'm not sure if we still have that one from yesterday. It doesn't look like we do. But with this news, with evidence of this, right now that this definitively proves that our CEO, Mike Lindell, has been vindicated. So given that, isn't it about time that the FBI return his cell phone to him? As you recall, the FBI seized Mr. Lindell's phone in a Hardee's parking lot back in 2022 related to the Tina Peters political persecution. We'll remind you that Ms. Peters, the former Mesa County election official, now sits in prison for her efforts in trying to promote transparency in our elections and doing what she was supposed to do, secure and maintain election data. Mike Lindell hasn't gotten his phone back, though, yet from the FBI, even though Kash Patel and Dan Bongino has taken over. But perhaps we're close to a breakthrough there, because James O'Keefe of OMG Media finally received his phone back this week, which he announced on social media. Look.
So here you have it. One receipt for property, 2 iPhones returned to me some 3.5 years later. Unconstitutional raids against journalists. If it takes them this long to return your property to a newsroom, well, good luck on getting the Epstein list.
It doesn't bode well, does not portend well for the Epstein list, as James O'Keefe just noted. Let's see where we stand today. Arrest 0, investigations, maybe 1, strongly worded letters, more than 2, and more Fox News appearances than we can keep track of. Look, Mike Lindell's phone should have already been returned to him. This is not, I'm going to say this, it's not your job as an American patriot to trust Dan Bongino or trust Kash Patel. Your job is to demand results. And that is what we will continue to do here at The Absolute Truth and Lindell TV. In other news, President Donald Trump headed to Walter Reed today for an annual physical, which means, of course, the president's health was the prime focus of today's briefing. And here's our better briefing.
Caroline, will you guys also consider releasing the president's fitness plan? He actually looks healthier than ever before. Healthier than he did 8 years ago, and I'm sure everybody in this room could agree. Is he working out with Bobby Kennedy? And is he eating less McDonald's?
I can confirm the president is in very good shape, as you see, on a near daily basis here. And in that vein, thank God it's Friday. It's been a very long and busy week here at the White House. We will see you all on Monday, and we will release the results of that report as soon as we can.
So the Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, chuckling a bit at our own Cara Castronova's question, noting that it looked like Donald Trump might be working out with RFK Jr. on his fitness plan, but we don't have confirmation of that. We are still awaiting the report of the president's physical. I will tell you, though, based on the years that I covered the White House directly, there on the grounds during the first Trump administration. Often when President Trump would go to Walter Reed for this kind of physical, he would visit Walter Reed from time to time in general. He would make a point to stop by and see some of the wounded warriors who are being treated there. And I'll never forget, you could tell that meeting with them left a lasting impression on the president. He would talk about obviously the ones who were, you could see were physically wounded, right? That was very obvious to the eyes, but most striking to him were those who were not physically wounded, but had obviously mental wounds that he said would affect them and their families, and no one would know from the outside. You could see that those interactions really haunted President Trump. And I will say that as we head into Iran talks, direct talks with Iran over the weekend, and as there's talks of striking Iran, those are the kind of images that I know President Trump has in his mind, meeting with the wounded warriors at Walter Reed as he weighs decisions of whether to get the U.S. directly involved in conflicts. Now, just a little bit of a caveat that right there, based on my personal experience covering Donald Trump myself. Again, when we have more information on the president's visit, we'll share that with you.
It was 1 in 10,000 children had autism, and now it's 1 in 31. Not 31,000, 31. That's a horrible statistic, isn't it? And there's got to be something artificial out there that's doing this. So you think you're going to have a pretty good idea, huh?
We will know by September.
There will be no bigger news conference than that. So that's it. If you can come up with that answer where you stop taking something, you stop eating something, or maybe it's a shot, but something's causing it. It can't be from 10,000 to, can you imagine that, Margo? That's a big number.
Those are big numbers indeed. And that was some big news from yesterday's televised cabinet meeting in which President Donald Trump made it clear his interest in knowing if autism resulted from childhood vaccines, to which RFK Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services, responded.
The autism rates have gone from now, most recent numbers we think are going to be about 1 in 31, from 1 in 20, so they're going up again. From 1 in 10,000 when I was a kid. And we are going, at your direction, we are going to know by September. We've launched a massive testing and research effort that's going to involve hundreds of scientists from around the world.
You all know that I and many other supporters of the Make America Healthy Again movement have been worried that RFK Jr. has somehow been captured by the special interest that usually runs not just HHS, but the federal bureaucracy in general. But our next guest, Sophia Carstens, says Bobby Kennedy is acting crazy, but in a good way that will benefit the MAHA movement. And she joins us now. Sophia Carstens, she is a health activist. She's also a longtime supporter of the MAHA movement, and she's the treasurer of the Decentralized America Super PAC. I'm very interested in what you have to say, Sophia, because I was one of those people that were questioning what is going on with Bobby Kennedy. And the reason I question him is because I've been embedded in the swamp, okay? I've covered it for over a decade. I know a lot of these people. I know how it goes. There is lots of pressure and lots of influence over our elected government officials and our appointed government officials both. And I was fearing that he was falling prey to that, but you say it isn't so. Please explain.
Yeah, you're spot on. Certainly we are dealing with the swamp. So, this is not cake or death. We're dealing with Sophie's choice in a lot of ways. And that's just a fact. That's just the terrain. But I do know that when you're talking about regulatory capture and corruption inside government agencies, and capture often when it comes to individuals, and that means pharmaceutical industry, big ag, big pharma, whatever that is, you have capture at levels that are higher than someone like Bobby Kennedy, who is trying to affect this change. So they have people who and systems who are captured have unilateral power to be able to thwart his efforts. So what he has to figure out, if the front door is slammed shut and locked, he's got to figure out a way to go around the back and come in a window. And that's what he's doing. So when we look at studies historically, when it comes to anything in this realm, but largely, let's take the autism studies. There is a study, it's called the Burbacher study, that really explains how mercury is problematic as an adjuvant in these vaccines. It's the dissection of those studies that were done improperly. The dissection is done improperly to put a different spin on the narrative to people. So again, I'll use the Burbacher study as an example. The spin on the Burbacher study, which shows that the rate of slope is 0, so the mercury is in the brain forever. The spin of that is, well, there's a difference between ethyl and methyl mercury, which is true, there is, but both break down into inorganic and organic subtypes. So there are multiple capillaries that need to be untangled. And in both of those instances, we're talking about some of it clearing from the brain, some of it not clearing from the brain, but it definitely shows that it is crossing the blood-brain barrier, number one. And number two, why are we having a conversation about different kinds of lighter fluid with matches? So ultimately, the framing and the bait and switch and the look over here so that you don't see what's going on over here is irrelevant because we are talking about harms. That's the forward-facing side of it. On the back side of it, most studies are disallowed. So the Burbacher study slipped through, but really we don't have the proper cohorts and the proper studies to show what we know are connections and signals that should be properly surveilled and properly tested and properly studied. So what Bobby's doing right now is managing many different capillaries, many different tributaries from the same mouth of the river. And he's got people at all turns trying to block those efforts. So he has to be smarter than those people instead of banging his head against a brick wall and go around the back way and start just implementing these studies, start doing these studies, start doing this testing internationally, using all cohorts, so that when he does stand up, and I think if we give him a year, that's reasonable. He yesterday in a press conference said, September, they should start to have some answers. I think that's probably a fair bet. But certainly if within a year, we can give him a year to start to have something to stand on when he stands up to these people and says, no, this is not just me, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., connecting dots into a unicorn. Here are the studies. Here is what this shows. These are not just signals anymore. These are not just corollaries anymore. These are actual facts that fit together. And we know now what these harms are and how much of a margin we have let slide when it comes to approval of these products. And again, coming back to regulatory capture. So the problem is that this is not just, he can't just go down one road. There are so many, it's complex, and there's a multitude of things that he has to accomplish. And at every turn, he's going to get blocked, including getting his generals in there. So Cassidy, Senator Cassidy, for example, has unilateral power to be able to block his picks for everything from chief counsel to the people that are running these agencies. And
the CDC director, we lost Weldon because of Cassidy.
That was a really big issue. And, I think everybody, including Weldon, was pretty blindsided by that. So, it's great to assume that everybody has the best intentions and nobody's captured and we're all just trying to work it out at the table. But that's not what's happening. We have captured people and we have captured agencies. And you can try to fight fire with a spatula and a stapler, but it's not going to work. You have to be more clever than that. And Bobby is particularly equipped to go up against this machinery. and he is particularly equipped to understand the mechanisms that he needs to be able to fight this machinery effectively.
So when he gets out, so like let's take that Fox News op-ed from last month, for example, where he said that the MMR vaccine is still the best way to prevent the measles. You're telling me he's doing that to play the game so he can backdoor getting these studies out, getting real studies done on the correlation between the jabs, the vaccines, and autism.
And yes, I am saying that. And I also suggest that a clever man never has to lie. And you should pay very close attention to Robert Kennedy's words. He did not say the vaccine was safe and effective. He did not say that there were not downstream harms. He did not say that there were not signals that show that we should properly surveil and test these products. What he said was, it is the most effective way to prevent the measles. That is a true statement. It is he also didn't say that preventing the measles was necessary or advisable. What he said was that vaccine is the most effective way to stop the measles. That's true. So again, he is playing 5D chess right now with major machinery that has a vested interest, and I do mean vested interest, in stopping what he is doing. The bottom line that he is going after, he is making a run at an entire powerful macroeconomic machine, and these forces are far more powerful than he is. So first of all, that's why I likened this to a greater fool. Aaron Sorkin famously said, this whole country was built by greater fools, people who believed, it's actually a finance, it's an economic term, but effectively people who believe that they can succeed where everyone else has failed. And we don't have a country if we don't have greater fools. And I don't think we have one in the future if we don't have someone like Bobby Kennedy who is willing to take that risk for us, to carry that ball, to advance that ball down the field for us. Because I cannot think of one other person who is willing to suffer those slings and arrows voluntarily. I mean, this is powerful machinery, and it has destroyed him for years. And yet he is still giving himself up as the sacrificial lamb to be able to advance this ball. So the rest of the movement turning on him, and this is the model, listen, destroy from the inside, divide and conquer. We understand this is the model. But the more that we can rally behind him and shield him from this and let him advance that ball, the better chance we have. We don't know if he's going to be successful, but I can't think of anyone else who has a better shot. And if we require him to blow himself up now, before he's advanced that ball, we're not going to get anywhere, and more lives are going to be lost.
This is exactly what Charlene Bollinger from Truth About Cancer told us yesterday. So you're echoing his statements. Based on what she said yesterday, his statements in the cabinet room, when I gave my quarterly grades for the cabinet members today, I upped him to a C+ because the jury's still a little bit out, but I'm absolutely rooting for him. I think what you're saying, the way you laid it out, makes sense to me. I do understand that swamp, if anything, and I'm encouraged that you and Charlene thinks that he has not succumbed to that, but he's navigating it. I also want to let our audience know that you wrote about this in a guest post to our friend Dr. Robert Malone's Substack as well, correct? So if they want to go check that out, you can go to Dr. Malone's Substack to read more about what Sophia is talking about here and the kind of strategy that's being deployed. Sophia, we'll give him what we will have our eye on September, and I cannot wait to see this data. As Donald Trump said, it might be the biggest press conference, and I know for parents of children, and I know many of them who feel that the childhood vaccines cause their children's autisms or other kind of related neurological disorders, they will they will be watching very closely.
Good. I'd echo what Howard said on the trade queue, that we've got over 75 countries that want to come in. So it'll be Treasury, Commerce, Jameson at USTR, and we're putting a process in place. And as you said, you're going to be part of the negotiations too, because I've had these countries call me up and the Secretary Bessent, we're happy you're going to be negotiating. I said, well, President Trump's going to be involved too. So bring your best deal.
Yesterday's televised cabinet meeting was a real barn burner, and not just because of the amazing interaction between President Donald Trump and RFK Jr., but also because of that interesting insight that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent offered about how well the trade war is going for the United States. After having been warned that we're headed off an economic cliff for the last week, more than 75 countries are begging Donald Trump to renegotiate, and it gets better. According to Breitbart News, the world is being made to choose between the United States and China on trade, and some of the biggest economies in the world are choosing to renegotiate with America.
They have the most imbalanced economy in the history of the modern world, and I can tell you that this escalation is a loser for them. That they have some very smart, the economists, the academicians, technocrats within their bureaucracy, and they would be telling the leadership that we do not have the edge here. They are the surplus country, that their exports to the U.S. are 5 times our exports to China. So they can raise their tariffs, but so what?
It might not feel like a bed of roses, though. Our next guest, caller Cortez of Cortez Wealth Management, says regardless of what happens, America is entering what is known as a bear market. Listen.
We have the same pattern like we did in 2020 that is happening right now. There's a big dip, it shoots back up before it comes right back down. This happened in 1929, this happened during COVID, and it's happening right now. This is algorithmic trading at its best. This next wave down will be massive, probably 2 to 3 times more. The S&P 500 could see Fibonacci retracements all the way down to 3,200. We are here to help you. We are here to protect you. We are here to show you how to make money in the bear market cycle. We are officially in bear market territory. What are you doing right now? If you have a 401k and IRA, do not sit there. The financial hurricane is here. Do not get fooled and suckered. Protect your retirement. We're here to help. All you have to do is give us a call, 833-813-3446. Carlos Cortez here.
And Carlos Cortez joins us now. Carlos, it's good to see you. A lot of people are feeling worried, right? In case in point, I want to play this from the briefing today. Caroline Leavitt was asked about consumer confidence, which isn't particularly high at the moment. Take a listen.
Why is American consumer confidence so low?
Look, I think there's a great optimism in this economy, great optimism for the American people, a lot of reason for people to feel optimistic. The president is, as I just said, trying to renegotiate the global trade agenda that has ripped off the American people for far too long. As he said, this is going to be a period of transition. He wants consumers to trust in him, and they should trust in him. Look at what he did in his first.
So they're telling you it's going to hurt a little bit. There's lots of ups and downs. Let's start with Bitcoin, because it seems like it's swinging pretty wildly, and a lot of people have felt like Bitcoin's the future. So what should we expect there?
Yeah, Bitcoin's a whole nother segment, my friend. And thanks for having me, Emerald. I love being here. With Bitcoin in itself, it's viewed as, so there's 2 camps with Bitcoin. It's viewed as a technical sector. So if you look at a chart of Tesla, which was down today, and if you look at Bitcoin, it's very similar. That's because there's a huge correlation with Bitcoin and Tesla. And because of that, Wall Street does adapt it as the tech sector. Then you look at the millennial demographic, which is going to have the power, the millennial and the Z generation. Once mom and dad pass away, we are going to see the massive biggest wealth in American in world history, as a matter of fact, get shifted to the millennials and the Z generation. Because when you pass away, whether it's an inherited IRA or when you receive inheritance, most of the boomers, they're just buying like CDs, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. but not this generation. This generation does not want to be manipulated into buying something that mom and dad bought. That's old school, and they don't want that anymore. They want crypto. They want things that are cutting edge. And so you'll see Bitcoin reach $1 million inside of 10 years. Possibly Bitcoin will be roughly $250,000 between 4 to 6 years. I did a shot call back in COVID that would hit 100,000 by 2024. I missed it by obviously 8 or 9 months. But my next call on Bitcoin is 62. I believe Bitcoin will continue to go down to 62,000. The swings are 60 to 70%. I do not recommend buying Bitcoin if you can't handle 60 to 70% swings, because that is the natural cycle of Bitcoin.
It is. I'm not good at. I'm not a gambler, so it's very hard for me to watch what's happening right now in the market, right? Because it's literally all over the place. But
Yeah.
Donald Trump is asking American people to trust him, right? Because our economy has been so built on smoke and mirrors, and he's trying to actually get it back to something substantial, right? And to rebuild the middle class. So how do people look at this, and how should they consider these swings they're seeing? It's not just Bitcoin, it's everything. It's just all over the place, and people are getting very concerned about their investments. I overheard a restaurant table conversation where the lady's like panicking about her 401k. But what would you say to these people with these swings? How should they interpret them and write it out as Trump does this tariff policy?
Yeah. So unfortunately, people that are retired or they have a 401k or 457 for our cops and teachers and governmental workers, you're really, first and foremost, you don't own your 401k. So people, that's a red pill when it's in itself, but that's another conversation. But your 401k is actually administered by your plan administrator, and you'll have different options, right? In your 401k, and majority of 401ks are 90% mutual funds. So that's the problem there. Mutual funds are very slow. Think of just like a whale trying to chase a shark, right? It could happen, right? But it's very, very slow because there's millions, if not billions of dollars in these funds, and they just can't move with the tactical, more agile money managers. And these clients, retirees, AKA the average American worker, they have their nest egg, unfortunately, in red money, which is the 401ks. And what we do here at my firm is we color code your money. So red money is going to be mutual funds, stocks, bonds, anything has unlimited losses, unlimited gains. And unfortunately, people, retirees, middle America, they don't understand that when you have a 401k or mutual funds, you could get hurt through these volatile swings because it's not actively traded. It's not actively managed. It's more passive. So mutual fund managers, they're open-ended. So they actually have to subscribe to their investment objectives. This is why many Americans have 15 to 20 different mutual funds, because they carve out a piece to a certain investment objective, then that investment objective, then that investment objective. And whoever has the best returns at the end of the year, we're going to go all in on this investment objective. Well, the problem is what is your investment objective? Why can't we allocate and tailor something towards your investment objective? And so that's what a fiduciary does. That's what I do. And 401ks are just a terrible spot. If I can't give investment advice, and this is not investment advice, but if you can read between the lines here, if you have a 401k and a market is probably going to go down another 20, 25%, Emerald, then do the math here. Call your 401k provider right now and say, I would like to go into short-term fixed income. Whatever that looks like in your 401k, I don't know what it is, but you have to have a short-term fixed income option in your 401k so you can avoid the additional bear market rallies, the bear market volatility that we are going to happen. So we are in it right now.
We're in it. And it is scary
We're
for a
in
lot
it.
of people. I was watching your show the other day, just to let my audience know, you are also a host right here at Lindell TV. You host Scriptures and Wall Street. And I was listening to you talk about some of this Bitcoin. I was like, that's exactly sort of how I'm feeling, or, some of the market swings. So if you'd like to hear more about what Carlos saying here, definitely tune into him every day at Scriptures and Wall Street right here on LindellTV.com. You can go to AmericaFirstRetirementPlan.com, AmericaFirstRetirementPlan.com to find out more. It's good to see you on my show, Carlos. I see you on my big screen as I'm prepping for my show every day.
I need to get you on my show.
There you go. Happy anytime. Thanks, Carlos.
Oh, thanks, you, Emerald. I appreciate it.
A proposed Florida law known as Cody's Law could end up being the test case for getting all 50 states to pass greater protections for the vaccine injured. In the wake of the COVID-19 forced vaccinations, even Harvard scientists are sounding the alarm about vaccine injuries by advising their peers to take the claims of vaccine-injured people far more seriously. After receiving the mRNA shot for COVID-19 in 2021, a young man named Cody Hudson immediately developed extreme vaccine-related injuries, including a large pulmonary embolism. Of course, there was no recourse for Cody and his family because our government takes the side of big pharma rather than we, the people, when it comes to things like vaccine injury. That's why Heather Hudson, Cody's mom, and Nick Cataruno, an advocate and family friend of the Hudsons, are fighting for Florida's state government to pass Cody's Law. And we're now joined by both Nick and Heather. Thank you both for being here. It's heart-wrenching when you hear the stories of the vaccine injured and their families, because for far too long, victims of the jabs were not taken seriously, Heather. So we're very sorry for what your family's been through. But you've taken action. You moved forward. Tell us why you decided to get involved in the push for legislation.
So in Cody's case, he's actually terminally ill. He's extremely sick. He has an autoimmune blood clotting disorder that he's left with for life, and it is life-threatening. He can have blood clots at any time that can end his life. And so every day is a blessing with Cody. He has a wonderful team here in Florida of physicians, but we also have a very tight-knit team of medical freedom and vaccine-injured families. So we're not alone. But as I try to get Cody help and medical care, the medical centers are not friendly to let me just say, like the fiat medical centers, the larger hospital systems, the larger universities are not easy to work with on these vaccine injuries. And so we have to work with independent doctors. And in doing so, the medication for Cody that might save his life, we found out would cost upwards of $60,000. And so we tried to apply for Social Security disability for him. And he went through a year-long process just clinging on to life. And even though he has multiple doctors that diagnosed him as disabled and that he has a terminal illness, he was denied his disability claim. His doctors were floored. The vaccine injury community was floored. And so I wrote Cody's Law in order to try to get help. When a cancer patient goes to the hospital and is diagnosed with cancer, they immediately have a social worker that comes into the room and starts working with them to get care through compassionate allowances, which is a program that essentially just expedites the claims process, nothing more. It just expedites it. So when I wrote Cody's Law, that's what we're asking for, is an expediting of the claims process. We're also asking for the patient's doctors determinations of disability to guide the process, because in Congress, even in their reports on the vaccine injuries from COVID-19, they acknowledge that HHS and the Public Health Department have not acknowledged, in fact, they alienated and dismissed the vaccine injured. And that means that all of the codes that should have been put in place for them to get the insurance or get to disability, they're still not in place. So we're left very much on our own. And Cody's Law would circumvent that and allow the doctors to make the determinations, and then it would expedite the claims processes, which can be anywhere from 1 to 6 years. We thought we would get a great deal of support because Governor DeSantis has been behind closed doors making calls. His team has been making calls to the vaccine injured families and those who would help in this process since 2022. We've also had multiple advocates, including Nick, attorneys and doctors that Nick is affiliated with, contact Governor DeSantis and Dr. Latipo about Cody's case and about getting Cody's law forward. And we had indications that they would help. And all of a sudden, we started getting confusing inaction and getting ghosted even. So we were confused as to why Governor DeSantis and Dr. Latipo and even Casey DeSantis would not help. And so Cody's law received absolutely no help from our top politicians in Florida, even though it had 4 sponsors, 2 in the House and 2 in the Senate and the legislature. So Nick is not a stranger to this happening in our state, having these medical freedom bills being squashed. And so he knows a little bit about that part of it.
So what is going on, Nick?
Well, it just, when everybody around the country is looking at Florida, we're looking at Governor DeSantis. We see he took the lead in the country over COVID and the lockdowns. But prior to him being against the vaccines, he was very pro-vaccine. And there was a lot of damage done as a result of that. There wasn't one governor or one legislator or anybody in any area of politics that wasn't pushing the shots or remaining quiet while it was happening. But fortunately, in the state of Florida, we have Ladapo has called it the Antichrist of medicine. We have the governor has been on town halls and press conferences with vaccine injured. He's openly proclaimed there are vaccine injuries. But the mysterious thing is nobody wants to do anything about it. I don't know if you ever seen that commercial where there's a bank robbery in progress and the cop in the bank says there's a bank robbery in progress, and the people on the floor go, well, do something, because I'm not here to do anything. I'm just here to tell you what's happening. And that seems to be what we're having in the state of Florida. What we've noticed with different legislations that we've done a couple of years ago and different programs, every time we have people that want to support and want to help, and it looks very positive, somebody seems to get to them and shut it down. I was working with Karen Kingston, and Karen and I and other activists had sheriffs that we were going to bring criminal complaints with the vaccine injury. We had sheriff that was very on board. The next thing you know, he got spooked, shut it down, said there was a grand jury in progress and it would be illegal to do anything. We had Joel Rudman, who was the only physician in the Florida legislature. Heather and I had met with him personally at an event, Dr. Littell's event. He was very much on board. I was talking to his aide, and all of a sudden he got pulled to go national. And the next thing we know, he couldn't help us. And then he never even went national. So there's a lot of circumstances, but and I could spend a lot of time talking about so many things that have happened. But the grievous thing around the country is, like, I think John Rich has a video out that's circulating that he talked to Trump about the vaccine injuries.
Yeah.
And he says nobody knows, everybody's in touch with somebody that's either died or been injured by these things. We all know it. My neighbor's adult son died in his sleep. In 2-week time, I had 4 people, including some people in my family, die in their sleep. And I had a family member, 39 years old, with 3 kids in the house, went to the garage and dropped dead. Something's going on. We all know it. And yet nobody's willing to address the situation. And what we're asking with Cody's law, at the very least, it's a tip of the iceberg, help these people who did what they were told to do, right? They were coerced, they were manipulated, they were encouraged, don't kill grandma, don't go home and kill mom. We can't just abandon them. And my greatest fear is that we start turning out like Canada, where some of the injured are being acknowledged and saying, we know we injured you, but we're going to offer you, assisted suicide. And it's that danger of the loss of value of life that really scares me, because if we allow the injured to go unacknowledged and unhelped, and we try to move on and leave all these people behind us, we're falling as a society, and we're opening the door to the next slippery slope down. And it's not like I'm guessing this or trying to predict it. We're seeing it in Canada. We're seeing it in other places. I know injured here in the state of Florida that were desperate and could not find answers, and they were talking to doctors in Colorado that would kill them. So this is even happening here in the United States. And I'm sure you're aware people have committed a suicide. They're not, Cody, as troubled as he is health wise, he has a family supporting him. Imagine if he was alone. We have a friend, Michelle Utter, who's by herself, that's selling everything she's got. And she's going down, and she has to choose between, am I going to pay the rent? Am I going to, and everybody's depending on the welfare of others, the generosity of others to survive. But how long can that happen? And how long do we continue to deny the problem?
Well, look, when they open that box, when they acknowledge it, think about how many injured there are and the massive fallout, the amount of money. Because look, Cody's 21 when he's injured. He has, these chronic problems now that require so much medical assistance, so much money. I think they don't, even those who are not just bought off by Big Pharma, and that's many, and we can talk about that because they even have media outlets trying to discredit you, it sounds like, right? Like Politico, which we're very familiar with here. But, and got USAID money, let's not forget Politico. The amount of money, the financial devastation of this loan is insane, right?
It's
so this particular Cody's law should not cost the states or the federal government any more money than it would.
Okay.
If somebody were to be disabled and go on to disability, they would do that with or without Cody's law. If they go on disability with or without a vaccine injury, when the claims are expedited like they are for cancer patients, it does not increase the amount of money that the state or the federal government has to pay. People who are disabled, as you know, have paid into their disability insurance as they work. And so the claim expediting process only does exactly that. And so this is why we were dumbfounded, why we didn't get any support in Florida. I don't know if you know, but in the congressional report in October 2024, they did acknowledge these injuries and they acknowledge the mistreatment. Their words are actually alienated and dismissed. So they have acknowledged all of these issues. Governor DeSantis and Dr. Latipo have been made well aware of that by myself, Nick, his team. We have thousands of people who have called in to Governor DeSantis, Casey DeSantis, and Dr. Latipo, as well as we went to the Capitol on the 26th of March with 100 MAHA advocates in order to bring forward not only Cody's law, but the other medical freedom legislation. But I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Latipo one-on-one, and even after that, even after his promises to get a hold of me and to talk to me and discuss Cody's law, he absolutely has not returned my calls. I opened a case with Governor DeSantis' team. I called them after that and I said, I think something's wrong and it needs to be investigated. We don't understand why there's no support. We don't understand why we had four different both Senate and House members sponsor Cody's law, which is huge to get 4 sponsors on a bill and then to have it completely squashed in the committees. It doesn't make sense. So I opened a case and I have still not heard back from Governor DeSantis. So despite the acknowledgement in Congress, there was also a letter from 14 state attorney generals, a 9-page letter to HHS Becerra on December 30th of 2024, asking for them to investigate the quote-unquote mistreatment of the vaccine injured. So this law that should not put additional financial burdens on the state or the federal government, for some reason is not going forward, and seems to be that there might be some sort of something that needs to be investigated as to why, because it had so much support, thousands and thousands of people calling, writing, not just from the United States, but from the world.
Can I say something?
Look, there's a real record. Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned there's a lot of fear, and I've heard that from a lot of the financial hawks that this is going to cost a lot of money one way or the other. The way Heather presents it, it's absolutely these people just need disability. Just get them through the process faster. But at the end of the day, if we don't hold people accountable and we don't start saying
Yeah.
you right, and we've given these people complete immunity. The government's pushed these things. They created the problem, and if we don't hold them accountable, it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen worse. And people
There has
need
to
to
be
think about that.
accountability.
There has to be accountability, and somebody has to be brave enough and honest enough to step up and say, let's address the problem, and let's take one day at a time and figure out how we're going to do it.
No, there's no way around it. We're headed for a reckoning. Whether they want to ignore it for a long time or as long as they can, we're going to hit a brick wall with it. There's just too many effects, detrimental effects from these forced jabs. I'm so sorry for what your family's been through, Heather. Keep us posted on Cody's Law. There should be a way for these people to get medical care and treatment. And it's heartbreaking that even in a state like Florida that you think you have support, you really don't. There is something there. You're absolutely right. And I do think it's going to come to light. I think we probably know what it is, but I think it'll be more open. More people will see it in the near future. Thank you both so much. And we'll have you back again. Keep us posted. This is one of those pieces of legislation that we want to follow along the path and see if you can get it implemented. Thank you both.
Thank you.
We're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep fighting. Thank you, Emerald. We really appreciate you. Thank you. God bless you.